Welcome back to Professional Insights, brought to you in part by National Referral Network. And the idea of these calls, as always, is to help provide education and enlightenment for those that watch and help you be more efficient in running your business and your practices. And this morning, we got Yahaira on the phone, HR consultant, 10 years of experience working in the corporate side. And she is here to talk about some of the challenges that the workforce is having right now, how they can protect themselves. We're going to have a great conversation. It's just one conversation. Good morning, Yahaira. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So we're going to dive into this thing. And the first question that I really have is, I know employees have an HR person. If there's a company, right? They have an HR person. I had an HR person in my corporate life. I never understood really what they did. What does a human resource professional do for companies?
Great question. There's so many behind the scene things that happen prior to even an employee coming on board. You're writing job descriptions, you're, providing structure, you're figuring out what your budget allows for, and then what level of expertise you need. There's a lot of, there's benefits handling, there's onboarding programs that go into place. There's lots and lots of paperwork that goes in behind the scenes to ensure that your company is in compliance with both federal, state, and local regulations that an HR person has to do.
So with the compliance side, and you and I spoke about this the other day, and we've heard about this from other professionals that we've interviewed with. We haven't interviewed an HR professional, but we've talked to attorneys, employment attorneys. One of the, I can't say one of them, a big factor in working with companies as an HR professional is their handbook. So when it comes to compliance, talk to us a little bit about what that handbook is and how it protects companies.
So a handbook is really, something, it's basically the guidelines for how the business should be operating. An employee should be able to go to a handbook and find answers to their common day questions, right? From, where do I go for help for, benefits, for, if I need to take a leave of absence, to, what's the PTO schedule? So there's a variety of information in a handbook. Every handbook is going to look different. And then every handbook should be updated regularly. And it should also, I love employment lawyers because they're the ones that review our work. It's always great. I always tell employers, have an employment attorney just review it. Even though as an HR professional, I'm getting the information from an employment attorney, I still want them to take a look to ensure that we're compliant for that specific employer, because every employer, depending on the size, depending on the industry, has to have certain regulations that are in there.
Interesting.
And follow certain policies.
So we interviewed an employment attorney and I want to see if this, I don't want to pick on the employment attorney. But one of the things he said was that if having an incorrect or out of date handbook is the number one reason why employers lose lawsuits. So obviously he's an attorney, he fights these things.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? How important is it to keep a handbook updated?
Super important. For my clients, I update them at the beginning of the year. So, and sometimes mid-year, there's certain things, depending on the state that you're in, there's certain, policies that go into effect at different times of the year. I completely agree with that employment attorney because, if you have a handbook that is not up to date, you might as well not have a handbook, because that can really be detrimental when you're going to court. You want to make sure that your handbook is updated, that you are aware of the policies and procedures that are coming down the pipeline, because it can affect not only you as the employer, but also the employees, right? And how they operate and some of the requirements. Because there's stuff like in your handbook that, for example, you might have a harassment prevention policy, But along with that, you're supposed to have training. So that's the biggest thing. I think that the handbook sets the guidelines, but the employer is then required to follow them, right? And so is the employee.
So you mentioned something that kind of caught my attention here. So you obviously you mentioned annual, right? But you threw in there a little bit like mid-year.
Mhm.
Now, how do you know when that handbook should be updated at mid-year? Like, is it something that happens on a regular basis? How do business owners know they need to be updating that?
Just being aware of their state policies, sometimes local ordinances. Your HR professionals should be up to date with compliance regulations that are coming down the pipeline. Like I already know for some of my clients, I'm going to be updating their handbook in January and in June again, because there's certain requirements that are coming into place. So it just all depends on your local government and what they're doing and what they're putting into place. A lot of the times, you know, you're subscribing to different newsletters, you're subscribing to different HR platforms, you are sitting in on webinars with lawyers, with employment lawyers who are telling you, hey, this is coming down the pipeline, because they're staying on top of the laws. They're following, what's getting signed, what's getting passed, what's not getting passed. A lot of the times, you know, some employment lawyers are like, hey, in 2026, watch out for this. And I'm like, what? It's 2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's how far in advance they're thinking, and they just start thinking about it, start thinking about how you're going to implement this, or we're keeping track of this. So you are aware as an employer that you will have to make adjustments.
Yahaira, we've talked to business owners, not on the show, but as clients, and I'm sure you've experienced this. They've got a family member, they've got somebody wearing multiple hats that they just kind of put into a role because, oh, hey, John, you can handle the hiring of the company. You are now our HR professional. And so there's a huge detriment to doing that. And we've talked to clients about this before. Not everybody's a controller or a CFO. Like, how important is it to have a qualified HR professional there on your side?
I mean, I highly recommend it. Not just because I'm in that field, but because, again, how we're saying there's, how the employment lawyer was saying, like there's lawsuits if your handbook isn't updated. An HR professional is really on top of everything employment, and they need to be on top of all the trainings. Sometimes putting somebody who is not qualified or who doesn't know anything about HR can hurt an organization more. Um, as as businesses start growing, they should really invest time and money sourcing the right HR person for their size. You may not need a director if you're a smaller organization. You might just need, a manager, an HR manager, just depending on the size. So you don't have to go from 0 to 100, but you should have somebody in place that is on top of that is their main focus of their employment.
So obviously we know lawsuits, right? A single lawsuit, it doesn't matter if it's HR, it could be an insurance claim, somebody gets hurt on the job site, whatever case is. One lawsuit can wipe out a business. Some of these other fines that you talked about, like not having your handbook or whatever the case is, kind of walk through some of what does that fine look like? Is it, I think Mike before the phone call mentioned, like, is it a speeding ticket? Like, is it $100? I mean, that's not a big deal. What are some of these other fines that business owners can get themselves into if they're not protecting themselves?
I mean, some of the fines could be a speeding ticket, but some of them could be up to 30 days of an employee's salary. If
Oh, wow.
it can be, thousands of dollars depending on what's going on. The you want to minimize your liability as an employer. So having process and procedures, having policies in place is going to do that for you. And to avoid some of these hefty fines. I mean, they start off small, but they quickly escalate. And then the longer that they go on, like I said, some of them could go on for up to 30 days. Some of them could go on until the problem is rectified. And then, class action lawsuits is a whole nother thing.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
small to mid-sized employers are the perfect target for these kinds of lawsuits. And that's who we want to ensure, some of the bigger corporations can handle, larger, having to spend a little bit more on rectifying a problem, where a smaller organization, you're better off, ensuring that it doesn't get to that place to begin with.
And a lot of these payroll companies, Yahaira, ADP, Paychecks, they offer HR services. How reliable, and I don't mean to pick on those big Goliath, right? But I feel that some of the services that they add aren't necessarily what they do. They just add them as a vertical for revenue. Good or bad, it's what they do. But how reliable are some of these systems that are just purely automated, that are not necessarily, or may not be necessarily industry specific? Do you have an idea of those or an opinion on those?
I mean, I've been the HR consultant for organizations who have POEs like ADP, because they do a certain portion of it, or they have, you're one of 70 clients or one of
Okay.
100 clients, so the time dedicated to your organization is very minimal, or it's very quick. They're not walking you through the process. They're not showing somebody on your team. They're not training you. They do offer great products, for, as far as like harassment prevention training. Great. There's a platform, there's a tracking mechanism. So software portion of it is great, but you still need somebody to press go, to press start. You need somebody to make sure that it's happening accurately. So those systems are great, but I still recommend a professional overseeing it.
So then where does a business owner, and this is one of the things that we ask all the time, right? Because there's so much noise on the internet. Where does a business owner go to get some education, just some preliminary education on the needs of their business in terms of HR? Where do they find that?
I mean, there's great organizations like SHRM. SHRM is a national organization that provides a lot of great resources, a lot of great templates. Um, I'm based in California, so there's also like Cal Chambers. There's a lot of HR organizations that provide a lot of great resources to employers, especially small ones that, like I said, they can't necessarily afford an HR director or somebody with over 10 years of experience. Um, there's also, different HR organizations locally, that they can tap into. Um, yeah.
Okay. Well,
Those
and
are
that's
just some, to mention a few. Oh, and the Department of Labor. Department of Labor
oh
has
the
lots of
the
great
I
information.
mean,
Um,
going through a Department of Labor site, because you sent that to me, and it's like going to the IRS site and trying to find information. It's just, man, it's like you go brain dead trying to find information. I mean, because the government's great at communicating simple concepts. Um, so with that, Yahaira, like based on your experience, I know things are shifting. We went from in office to work from home. Now this hybrid model, we're not quite sure what's moving forward. What do you predict for the future in terms of HR, and what should professionals be looking for without an attorney, right? But what should they be looking for in the near future that may affect their business?
um, Within HR, I mean, ensuring that you have an onboarding process. I was reading, um, some facts that 58% of employers who have an onboarding process retain employees for about 3 years.
Interesting.
I know, moving from, an in-person platform to having more remote work, there's still lots of great programs that your HR person can build and establish to make an employee feel a part of it. I mean, we're all a lot of us are working remotely,
Yeah.
and we still want to feel connected. We still want to be a part of the mission and the vision of an organization, and help move those forward. So engaging the employees, remotely, there's lots of great things. I've also seen a lot of employers have, you know, um, still having employees come in on either a social basis or coming in, for part-time in the office, part-time at home. But just keeping up to date with any HR trends that we see moving forward.
Fantastic. And I know that you're going through the process and evaluating NRN, and NRN is evaluating you. But from what you understand from the National Referral Network, how important is it to have resources and professionals that you can draw from to create more value for your clients?
Oh, it's amazing. I know that I can contact you and say, "Hey, this company that I'm working with needs, a CPA. I want to make sure that I'm referring a trusted partner, because that's my name on the line. And I
Absolutely.
want, people that are working with me are going to want to work with my trusted partners. And the NRN has already done all the vetting, so I know that if I need somebody, I can always come to you and say, "Hey, Mike, I need this person or this, this type of professional." Or sometimes it's like, "Hey, we can't quite define because somebody doesn't fit into a
Right.
specific title, but I'm like, I need somebody to do something like this." So having that resource and knowing that I can, pick up the phone and give you a call and ask for a specific referral is amazing.
Well, we certainly appreciate you being part of it. If you guys have any questions about this topic or any topic, please like, subscribe, shoot us a question. I'll forward it to Yahaira. We can get you guys the answers that you guys need. Please, this is serious. I know that it's a short conversation here, but having your handbook and making sure your policies and procedures are in place are extremely important. Can't stress that enough. If you have any questions, please reach out. But thank you so much for being here this morning. Look forward to working with you, and please let us know how we can help.
Thank you.